The FA have finally come down with a decision against Man City relating to their huge charges of breaching FFP rules. They have been expelled down to the 10th tier of league football and replaced by a team from the North West Counties League Division 1 South. But in an extraordinary twist, during the investigation it was found that all Premier League clubs have been involved in massive financial breaches, including Man United, who have been hit with the same penalty. The famous Manchester Derby will now be played in the 10th tier of English football, as these teams' reputations have been destroyed. They will need to fight their way back up into the Premier League all the way from level 10. Let's check out their opposition to start their journey, and they should face some stiff competition, probably 30 points back or so, from both Stockport Town and Stafford Town. But let's put some respect on this badge right here. One of the best I've ever seen from Subscribe to Mr. Apple's FM. Sorry, that should actually be Brockton. Man United made one extraordinary sale to start the first season, with Kobe Mainu being bought by Portland Timbers in the USA for just £4.2 million. Meanwhile, both Nathan Ake and Kyle Walker were transferred to PSG for 8 figures each, both with some add-ons. In the first season, it was obviously a race to see which one of the two teams would finish first. Early in the season, United travelled to City, and it was the blue side who scored 3 times without reply for the win. The return fixture at Old Trafford ended up being a 1-1 draw, meaning Man City were automatically promoted, while Man United needed to go through the playoffs and played Eccleshall off the park, naturally, as they beat them 6-0 on 34 shots to 1. Both teams had European fixtures this season in the Champions League, and Man United did what they did in real life and finished last in a group. This time it included Bayern, Celtic and Young Boys. The only point coming in the final fixture, a 1-1 draw away to Bayern. Man City had a much better run with 4 wins from their 6 games to top their group with Real Sociedad, Inter and PSV. In the round of 16 they beat Celtic 4-0 overall, but then drew Atletico Madrid in the quarterfinal, where the Spaniards won 3-1 in Madrid for Man City to be knocked out of the Champions League. Man City did win some more silverware though, with a win in the North West Counties League Cup against Everton. Clearly a momentous day for the club as they celebrated well into the night. All jokes aside, Man City had a great run in the FA Cup, knocking out the likes of Southampton 4-0, Leeds 1-0 away from home, and then Leicester City 3-0 as well. In the semi-final they faced Oxford United, where Erling Haaland and Julian Alvarez scored for City to progress through to the final 2-0. And it was Erling Haaland who scored first again for City in the FA Cup final in the 10th minute, which was then followed by his usually assisting mate Kevin De Bruyne, who scored in the second half for the team in the 10th tier of football to win the FA Cup. It really is the magic of the cup, isn't it? A tiny team goes on an incredible giant killing run and actually wins it. Season number 2 saw somewhat of a fire sale from Man United as they really struggled with their finances. Fernandes, Martinez, Sancho, Lindelof and Onana were all big name players heading out to other clubs, but it still only raised them £41.5 million. On the other hand, Man City managed to raise a ridiculous amount of money with their sales, but it meant all of Haaland, Doyle and De Bruyne went to PSG, while Bernardo Silva moved to Saudi Arabia, and Cancelo, Doku, Stones, Kovacic and Lewis were all players who moved overseas, with several of them occurring during the January transfer window. They made some big money moves themselves, with Jonathan Rowe, Jarrod Bowen, Emil Smith Rowe and Billy Gilmore amongst the players coming in. And United's woes were compounded further in this season as they went into administration and were docked 10 points in the league. They still made it to the playoffs, where they knocked out Burnley 3-0 in the semi-final to set up a match against their biggest rivals Liverpool, where they were beaten 2-1 at Anfield to stay in the 9th tier of English football for another season. Man City had a much easier time of it, not losing a game as they topped the table and got promoted into the 8th tier of English football. The Manchester clubs faced off in the second qualifying round of the FA Cup at the Etihad, with Rodri and Kovacic scoring either side of a Rasmus Højlund goal for City to progress. But they couldn't quite pull off their same FA Cup heroics as last season, as they lost to Southampton in a replay penalty shootout, with the Saints exacting some revenge. Man City also had Europa League football this season, and they had an incredible time of it, with 6 wins and 2 draws from the 8 games, meaning they finished second behind Benfica in the league phase. This 8-0 destruction of Qarabag at home being a major highlight. In the round of 16, they came up against Lazio from Italy and beat them away from home 2-1. Claudio Echeverri opened the scoring in the first minute, while Jarrod Bowen scored 23 minutes later from a well-worked free kick. And in the second leg, they held off Lazio with a 1-1 draw, thanks to a 76th minute Echeverri goal, meaning Lazio just got knocked out by a Northwest Counties team. Then in the quarter-final, after a 2-1 win at home against Sporting of Portugal, thanks to Ruben Dias nodding home a header in the first half injury time, they travelled to Portugal and unfortunately conceded early in the second half from a goal by the wonderful Victor Gyökeres. He was played beautifully through by Mateus Reis, and then Mateus Fernandes found Trincao on the end of a through pass for City to be knocked out 2-0 in Lisbon. As always folks, if you're new here and you enjoy fun experiments like this in FM24, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any further videos from me, and hit that like button as well so YouTube knows to send this video out to someone else's viewing pages. Thank you everyone for the ongoing support. Season number 3 sees the first time that these two teams have been in separate divisions since 2002, as Man City are now in the Northern Premier League Division 1 West. Yet more big sales by City, as all of Ruben Dias, Jack Grealish and Edison were sold for big money moves, while they brought in James Justin, Freddie Woodman, Anthony Robinson, George Hurst and Wilfred Ndidi amongst others. Man United also had to see some big name players leave, with Luke Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, Rasmus Højlund and Harry Maguire all leaving the club. United had a much better time of it this season without losing a game in the 9th tier, as they finished top of their group ahead of Burnley and Everton. Marcus Rashford and Antony were both influential this season, while former Hull City man Greg Docherty set up plenty of goals. Man City coasted to another league win, again not losing a game, but only drawing 1 against Liverpool. Jarrod Bowen top scored for the Citizens, with Phil Foden getting 22 assists as well. City had a decent run in the FA Cup, as they beat Newport Isle of Wight 1-0 in the 5th round to progress to the quarter-final, where they would go on to lose on penalties to Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium, despite creating a lot of chances. Man United's run was not quite as successful, as they came up against Aston Villa in the 2nd round and were beaten by Philippe Coutinho double, as they were knocked out early on. But they had a far more successful run in the FA Vase, as they beat Newcastle Town 3-1 despite conceding early on in the game, before going on to beat Brentford in the final at Wembley, with Marcus Rashford scoring a double. And just like the heroes of 1999, Man United would go on to win a treble, as they then beat Burnley on penalties in the final of the Northwest Counties League Cup, with Dalot scoring the winning penalty for the Red Devils. Let me know in the comments below whether you think the treble winning team of 2026 is better than the treble winning team of 1999. In season number 4, Man United pulled off a massive transfer shock, as they bought Evan Ferguson from Brighton for £3 million plus add-ons. And it was that man Evan Ferguson who scored early on for Man United, as they beat FC United of Manchester in the playoff final to win promotion to the 7th tier. Mason Mount and Antony also getting on the score sheet at Old Trafford, which was a highlight of a season in which they couldn't even make it to the main stage of the FA Cup. Coming up against Newcastle United in the 2nd qualifying round, they were beaten 3-1 at Old Trafford. Man City was still able to sell their players for a lot of money, as Rodri moved to Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia for £72 million, while tiny Premier League club Winsford United stumped up £28.5 million with a lot of add-ons for Claudio Echeverri. This meant City could splash out big money on Joe Willock, Cameron Pring and Alexis Cloud Maurice. And once again, Man City win another trophy, as they don't even lose a game in the Northern Premier League Premier Division, finishing 12 points clear of Liverpool. Phil Foden has now become a legend of the club, as he knocked in 31 goals, with Jarrod Bowen 2 goals behind him in 2nd place. But amazingly, Man City joined their big Manchester rivals in not even progressing through to the main stages of the FA Cup, as they were beaten by Burnley 3-2 at Turf Moor, with Burnley coming from behind in the 2nd half to knock them out of the cup. Man City were up into the National League this season, as they keep racing their neighbours into the Premier League. And for the first time in 5 seasons, Man City has actually lost a league game, with a 3-1 loss at home to Liverpool in October. They would then go on to lose another league game in March, this time to Southport, as they were beaten 1-0 at the Etihad. But of course, it was still a very successful season, as they topped the Vanarama National League North once again, with Phil Foden doing a Mikhailo Mudryk from the previous video, and topping the charts in both scoring and assists for the season. Man United also continued their successful ways, losing only 4 games en route to a Northern Premier League Premier Division title, finishing 1 point clear of Burnley. Mason Mount and Anthony were both instrumental in their quest to make it back to the National Leagues for next season. Unfortunately for United, they faced Premier League side Norwich City in the 5th round of the FA Cup and conceded 2 first half goals to lose the game 2-1, despite the Canaries going down to 10 men. But they were more successful in the FA Trophy as they went on to beat Dorking Wanderers in the quarterfinal, where they would face, of course, Man City. And it was the Brazilian Yaya Silva who was the hero for the citizens as they progressed to another final in this save, knocking out the Red Devils with a 1-0 win at the Etihad. Man United did win another trophy though, as they win the Northern Premier League Challenge Cup final with a 1-0 win against Everton, while Man City travelled to Wembley to lift the slightly more prestigious FA Trophy 2-1 against Tottenham, with the Spurs only able to score an 89th minute consolation goal. Maurice and Foden were the heroes on this day. Season number 6 and Man United were battling it out with Nottingham Forest in the National League North, and they were on the same amount of points going into the final day of the season. Forest were at home to lower table South Shields and could only manage a 2-2 draw. Man United travelled to Hereford and needed a 78th minute Anthony goal for the Red Devils to get promoted back to the Vanarama National League. And for the first time in this series, Man City didn't finish first in their league. They finished 3rd this season. They faced Barnet in the semi-finals and needed 3 second half goals to progress through to the final, where they would face Arsenal at Wembley. Man City scored first through club legend Phil Foden, who was played through for a 1-on-1. Arsenal equalised in the 33rd minute through an absolute cracker by Corey O'Keefe. Keelan Muscat then pounced on a tackle by the Arsenal defence to slot home a second for City, before Manuel Benson got on the end of a fantastic Ian Lurvy pass to go 3-1 up at half time. And there was only 1 goal in the second half, scored by Emilio Lawrence for Arsenal, meaning City have been promoted back to the Football League. They have been promoted every single one of their seasons since their demotion down to the 10th tier, and surely it will only take 3 more seasons to get back into the Premier League, right? Well, it went beautifully for them in the first season back in the Football League in Season 7, as they finished 2nd in the league to Brighton with a huge 100-point total. They did a bit better in the FA Cup this time around as well, as they beat former tiny Premier League club Winsford United 1-0, but came up against Premier League team Leicester in the 5th round and couldn't quite hang with them as they conceded 3 times to lose out 3-2. Man United could only make it into 4th place this season in the National League, and in the semi-final of the playoffs they had a poor start against Arsenal, as James Price opened the scoring early on. Arsenal then scored from a corner through Jake Davies in the 21st minute. Man United managed to pull one back through Elliot Miles in the 54th minute, but it wasn't enough as Alex Palmer sealed the game late on with the United's defence wide open. A 3-1 loss to the Gunners means they will be stuck in the National League for at least another season. United didn't even make it into the FA Cup proper as they travelled to the coast to play against Whitby Town and lost on penalties. Can you imagine a club the size of Whitby Town knocking out one of the most famous clubs in the world? United had the same position as last year as they once again finished 4th in the National League. In the semi-final of the playoffs, Enoch Aguiar scored the only goal of the game as he finished off a pass by Josh Dede to beat Halifax Town 1-0. And that man scored again in the 3rd minute of the final as he pounced on some poor defending. But then disaster struck for United as Josh Dede was sent off for a poor tackle in the 29th minute. It took until the 48th minute, but Spurs equalised through Benji Purcell slotting one across the keeper. United held on as much as they could despite only having 2 shots to Tottenham's 15, but it was Charlie Clark who put the Spurs ahead with a simple tap-in, followed by Mulao Garang with a neat bit of skill to beat Eli Harrison in goal for United to succumb to Spurs and be stuck in the National League yet again. Man City needed a win on the final day to have any chance of the playoffs in League One, but could only come up with a 2-2 away draw to Reading. In fact, they were probably lucky to get that, as City only equalised in the 96th minute of the game. Rotherham won their game 2-0 anyway, meaning City will not be going up to the Championship straight away, like they have done with every other league. Season 9 went better for Man City as they finished in 3rd place, but of course it wasn't enough for automatic promotion. And in the playoff final against Bolton, it was the Wanderers who took the lead early on with a beautiful team goal finished by William Humphries. Vivaldo Semedo managed to score an equaliser in the 75th minute to take the game to extra time, where City scored in the 100th minute through a simple tap into James Fenton. Surely now they were on the verge of promotion to the Championship, but in the 109th minute, Bolton scored through a lovely goal by the Argentinian Luca Romero to equalise the game. And then went ahead in the 110th minute through Sonny Finch after a wonderful little dummy by Romero left him wide open at the back post for City to lose the final and Bolton to be the team progressing into the Championship. In a game that would have been close to my heart, Man United faced off against Yeovil Town in the National League playoffs in the 2032 season. United scored first from a header from a corner by Ryan Rowlands. Isaac Yeboah scored a deflected goal for Yeovil Town 2 minutes later to get the score back to 1-1. But it was former Sheffield United man Cameron Archer getting the winning goal just before half-time for United, who go through to the playoff final with a 2-1 win over the Glovers, where Cameron Archer was again the difference maker as he scored the only goal of the game in the 67th minute thanks to a beautiful pass from man of the match Marcus Forss. And Man United are finally back into the Football League. To show how drastically different this world is, both Manchester teams were knocked out in the first round of the FA Cup as Man United lose out on penalties to Blackpool, while City lose to Aldershot Town 3-1, a team 2 divisions below them. Man City again failed to qualify for automatic promotion in the Championship in the 10th season as they finished in 5th place. And in the first round of the semi-final, they faced Reading and beat them 2-1 with all 3 goals coming just before the end of the game in a mad dash. But again, it is Reading who cost them a chance of promotion, just like 2 seasons ago, as they beat them 2-0 in the return leg with goals either side of the halftime break, meaning Man City are still stuck in the 3rd tier, where next season they'll be joined by their big rivals Man United for the first time in 8 seasons, as United are crowned the winners of League 2 with a huge 106 points. With this 5-0 win on the final day of the season, a clear indication of their attacking prowess against Accrington Stanley. The first season for these 2 teams back in the same division for a very long time saw an early season matchup at Old Trafford, with Man City taking the lead from a secondary play after a corner through Sam Wilbraham. Man United hit back just after the main break as Gareth Dully's shot deflected off a City defender for an own goal. And then Jake Batty sealed the game for the Red Devils in the 65th minute after a simple tap-in for United's first win over Man City in this entire save. In February, City were the hosts and got off to a great start with their fantastic forward Keelan Muscat heading in a goal past the keeper to open the scoring. Simon Brailsford then atoned for his own goal in the previous game by scoring the second goal in the 28th minute, before Rodrigo Mora scored a penalty to round off a 3-0 win for City. Yep, that's Wonderkid on this game, Rodrigo Mora, playing for League 1 Man City at 27 years old and on £97,000 per week. Both teams qualified for the playoffs and City beat Salford City 2-0 in the first leg, meaning a 2-1 loss away to Salford was still enough for them to progress to the final. But it won't be Man United who play them in the final, as they were held to a 0-0 draw to Northampton Town at Old Trafford, before the Cobblers broke the hearts of the Red Devils with a 2-1 win at Six Fields to go on to face City in the final, which was won by Man City as Nicolas Guerrero scored in the 74th minute, meaning Man City win the game 1-0 and progress through to the Championship for the first time in this save. Rodrigo Mora had a great season for the club, as he topped the league for the highest average rating, while the wonderfully named Quincy Mars got 15 clean sheets and goals. Man United had a far more successful effort in season number 12 as they gained automatic promotion to the Championship, with 96 points in the league seeing them finish in 2nd place. And they would have finished in 1st place if it wasn't for this final day of the season 0-0 draw against Tranmere Rovers at home, meaning Everton jumped them at the last minute. And Man City managed to finish in 6th place in the Championship for season number 12, Could they become just the second of our expelled Premier League teams to make it back to the Premier League behind Chelsea? They had an easy time of it in the semi-final first leg, as they trounced Millwall 4-0 at the Etihad, with this goal from winger Miguel Cantero being the pick of the bunch. Millwall put up more of a fight in the second leg, but could only score 3 times, as Man City also scored themselves. Going through to the final of the Championship playoffs, where they will face Croydon? One of our former tiny Premier League teams is still hanging around, as they beat Cardiff City to make the trip to Wembley. Man City opened the scoring early on, with former Feyenoord man Thijs Kruijveld getting on the end of a well-worked free kick. But Croydon equalised before halftime thanks to Thomas Walker slotting home an easy goal. And it was Croydon who would get the only goal in the second half through Gustavo Siar, as they are the team promoted back to the Premier League instead of Man City. What an incredible change to the world we have seen, thanks to the Premier League teams being expelled down to the 10th tier of English football. One of the main issues for Man City would be that their best player, Rodrigo Mora, actually left on a free transfer to Heather St John's this season, who only just survived relegation from the Championship themselves. Is this the season we finally see a Manchester team back in the Premier League? Both teams have strong enough squads to make the playoffs in the Championship. Hit that like button if you've got this far to see who's going to win this epic race back to the Premier League. Man City were level on points with Cardiff City and 4 goals ahead of them on goal difference as they head into the final day of the season. City travelled to former Premier League club Holmer Green and scored first through Guillermo Santos with a lovely goal, which was followed by Alexis Fuentes scoring a tap-in after Santos hit the woodwork in the 30th minute. And Fuentes scored his second goal of the game 12 minutes later, again slotting one home to an empty net, as Man City went on to win the game 3-2, where Cardiff were away to Sheffield Wednesday and were thrashed 4-1, meaning Man City are the winners of the race to get promoted back to the Premier League. But could Man United join them through the playoffs? United played Atherton Lebanon Rovers in the semi-final and opened the scoring through Kovalenko with a powerful shot, and then got a second goal late in the game through Pablo Galera. A 2-0 win over the Rovers at Old Trafford in the first leg. Surely that should be enough for Man United to defend against a small club like Atherton Lebanon Rovers going into the second leg. And again, it is a disaster for United, as they are embarrassed 3-0 away from home by the former tiny Premier League club, as Sverre Holsef Nipan scored the winner in the 68th minute with a lovely finish from a cross by Diogo Spencer. And United have lost outright to their noisy neighbours in this incredible journey back from the 10th tier of English football to the Premier League. Man City's first season back in the Premier League is a successful one, as a win on the final day of the season, 1-0, away at the Wes Hoolahan Stadium in Norwich, meant they finished in 5th place and reached the Champions League for the following season. But would they be joined by Man United, who travelled to Clint Hill Park to take on QPR for the final day of the season? I love the names that FN gives to new stadiums to honour legends of the clubs. And in the 76th minute, Raymond Bacharina rose highest from a corner to score the only goal of the game for United to win 1-0. And finally get themselves automatically promoted back into the Premier League. Man United were led by that man Bacharina at centre back, as well as probably the best player from Guyana I have ever seen, Kevin Richards, who scored 26 goals for the season. For the 15th and final full season that I'll go through in this video, Man City had a diabolical run in the Champions League. It started off with a 3-2 loss at home to Dinamo, which was then followed by losses to Monaco 1-0, Basak Shahir 2-1, and Borussia Dortmund 4-1 away in Germany. They then drew with fellow English side Sunderland 1-1 at home, before a fantastic 3-0 win against RB Salzburg at the Etihad, but then in January they were beaten comfortably 3-0 by Roma and could only muster a point against Napoli as they drew 0-0 in the final league game. This means City finished in 31st place in the league phase and were eliminated from the competition. But their 9th place finish in the Premier League was a whole lot better than Man United, who finished rock bottom of the table with just 28 points as they get relegated back down to the Championship. If we skip 5 years ahead to check out how our teams are doing by the 20th season, we see Man City have not had the greatest run. They finished in 9th place 2 further times after our last season, before dropping down to the table to 16th and then relegation in 19th place in 2042. They have managed to get themselves promoted back to the Premier League in 2043 after beating West Brom on the final day, with AFC Wimbledon losing as well. But they are clearly nowhere near the side they once were, and we have broken their stranglehold on English football. We didn't see Man United in the Championship though, and that's because they have reached the Champions League places of the Premier League, finishing in 4th place. In one of the most insane tables I think I've seen for a long time, there are 3 teams on 67 points and 2 teams on 66 points, but miles behind the league winners Leeds United. United took an extra season in the Championship before finishing in 1st place in their 2nd season back, and then they have steadily progressed their way back up to their current 4th place finish. Well, what a wonderful journey this has been for the Manchester clubs, going from the 10th tier of English football all the way into the Premier League, with Man City beating their rivals into the Premier League, but Man United perhaps becoming the better club overall. Join me next time round in this series for the race between Arsenal and Tottenham as the North London rivals make their journeys back up into the Premier League. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that video or any other content that I've got planned, with plenty of fun things going on for Mr. Apples FM. Hit the like button so this video gets sent out to someone new, and leave a comment down below to let me know who you think will win the race next week between Arsenal and Tottenham. On the screen now is a video showcasing the rivalry between West Ham and Chelsea to see who would win the race to claw themselves back up into the Premier League. But of course, the most important thing is for you guys to have yourselves a wonderful day.